Hello and welcome to the Marin-Sonoma Shop Local podcast where we highlight local businesses, their products, and their services so you can make the informed choice of where to shop local next. I'm your host, Kyle Masterpole, owner of The Bay Fitness and Sonoma and Senior Fitness, and here with a very special guest today. We have Myriam Martinez from Myriam Martinez Coaching, therapist and coach, but her title does not do her justice, and today we're going to find out exactly why, because she does quite a bit more than just being a therapist and coach, and it's how she goes about it. So, Marion, thank you for hopping on today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, give us a little overview of the services that Marion Martinez Coaching provides.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because I am a therapist and a coach. So I have two branches of service essentially, right? As a therapist, I provide clinical treatment for depression, anxiety, things like that. But in my coaching, my focus is women in midlife and beyond. And one of the reasons that I target that age group is because I understand, firsthand some of the struggles that come with being in that particular population, right? Um, and so working with women in midlife is really just something that ignites me. It excites me. I love watching women grow into themselves, feel more confident, do things that they wouldn't normally do, so that's really the essence of what I do is just help women feel more confident, feel more in their skin, in their bodies, feel better about themselves and really live the lives that they want to live, whatever that looks like for them, that they get to decide that.
I feel like you didn't even do yourself justice on that. Tell us a little more about your art therapy as well.
Yeah. So some of the modalities, right, that I use because I am a trained art therapist, and that's primarily the modality that I use. But I do also use other modalities that involve the body, right, because I'm very neuroscience oriented, connecting the mind with body, understanding how they impact each other, etc. So with art therapy and therapeutic art is what I call it in my coaching work, right? Because I'm very ethical, Kyle, and so I keep that line very clear between therapist and coach. Right? We're not supposed to kind of cross those lines, and so I make sure that the language that I use is different because I don't ever want to insinuate that I'm doing one or the other, right? Kind of crisscrossing those. But in my coaching work with the therapeutic art, it's really just a modality to help people like just get to the issue, right? So I've been doing this for a really long time. It's been over 20 years of doing this work, and what I've really come to recognize is that as beneficial as talk therapy or any kind of like talking modality can be in terms of gaining insight or learning more or having different language, etc. It has its limit. It reaches its limit. And a lot of the time when the people that are coming to me have done a lot of work and they're still struggling in some way, and I really normalize that for them. Like, yeah, you've done a lot of work, you know a lot of things, right? But your body, it's not caught up to that yet, right? And that's the frustrating part of it. It's like, oh, these unconscious drives, these things that are underneath us, right, that we don't have any access to, but yet make decisions on our behalf all the time, right? There's this statistic that says that we're only conscious 5% of the time. So 95% of the time, our unconscious is driving, and most people go, yikes. And it's like, yeah, I know. That's why we want to understand, right, what's going on underneath the surface so that we can feel more empowered in managing, some of those impulses that come up. So artwork, creative art process, any kind of neuroscience work. I also do brain spotting, which is, again, another modality that just gets to the root of the issue much more quickly. So it's much more impactful and much more empowering, right? Because again, if we just only use our left brain, we're kind of going in circles, so to speak, right? We're running in these loops, and that's often what frustrates people. But as soon
Mhm.
as we invite the right brain to take some participation in what we're trying to accomplish, everything changes and things become much more clear. You have a more direct route to where you want to go, and it's just much more empowering because of that. So yes, I use the art process, and many times people find, they'll say things like I'm not an artist, or I don't have any experience, or I'm not good at it, that kind of a thing. And it's like, well, I mean, thanks for letting me know. And this process has nothing to do with art skill. This is not an art class. You're not being graded. We can use as
I'm sure
simple
a
as
lot of people
tool,
need that.
right? As like just scribbling or doodling can bring an incredible amount of awareness about yourself and answers to questions that you have. So it really has nothing to do with that, right? And the emotional stuff that gets worked through when you're creating, right? Especially if you have all those thoughts, oh, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I'm good at it, we often approach many things in life like that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I can do it, right? I don't know if I have it. And so that's the parallel. So as you're moving through those kinds of barriers through the art process and then kind of coming out the other side going, oh, wow, I can do it. I am able to do it. I'm strong. I'm capable, right? That's the parallel with life. And so the more you kind of exercise that skill through the art process, the more you can bring that into everyday experiences. This is familiar to me now. I know how it feels when I'm going to do something that makes me feel intimidated or scared or unsure. Like I know how to do that because I've practiced so many times, right, through my art process and letting go, right?
Love that. And I do love going back a couple minutes how you said you don't cross that line of therapist. And for me personally, and I would think for the listeners as well, that develops some trust. You're going to stay in your lane, you're going to do what you can. I know for me, I often get called a physical therapist and I have to bring them back a little bit and say I am not a physical therapist. Do I work with injuries? Yes, but I work alongside the therapist and they kind of tell me what's wrong and then I take it from there. But
Mm-hmm.
it's good to know for the listeners that you're going to give them the best of you, and whatever line you tout. I mean, I know I'm speaking for you in this case. You can correct me, but if you need to refer out, you're going to because you're going to give them the best.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we always start with a consultation just to see if we mesh, how does it feel, right? And if it really doesn't feel like a good match, I'm totally happy to refer you to somebody else because I just care that you get what you're looking for,
Exactly.
right? And as long as you get that, then everything's good. But I think the part about the ethics I think is important to note here, because the ethics are what drive so much of what I do, right? What's okay, what's not okay, how am I compromising a client or putting a client, at risk in any way, or those kinds of things that I think that that's part of what makes me stand out as a coach is because
Mhm.
I have a mental health background, and so I really understand mental health, mental unwellness, symptoms, that kind of a thing. And so I know when somebody is more in like what we call in the therapy world a normal neurotic, which is just me and you just doing life, right? Versus somebody who's really struggling with mental health. Right. And so I know that line very well. And I never want to cross it because I know that if I did that, I wouldn't be living in integrity. And that's very important to me. Right. So you're right. I do show up for my clients in the best way that I can right off the bat because I know that I'm walking into it ethically and with a clear line of what kind of work we're doing.
So you put heart and passion to everything you do. So can you tell me a client outcome that you really take pride in, where they put a lot of work in with you both together, and just when you came out the other side, it was something that you'll always remember?
Yeah, I mean, there's several like that, but there's one in particular that always stands out, who I often share her story. And she came to me. Typically, like the presentation is like I'm kind of anxious. I know I'm kind of off. I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know if I like what I'm doing. There's just like something's off. Something doesn't feel right. Something needs to change. And there's a lot of like self blame. I think it's me. I'm doing something wrong. Can you fix me, Miriam? Right? It's like, oh, let's like look at what's happening here. And so she was a doula and had been doing it for a really long time. And I said, well, let's just like play with it. And so I invited her to just kind of do some scribbling and like just, show me something about like what it's like to be, a doula right now for you, right? And there was this image that kind of looked like a tornado, right? And I was like, she was talking about just like how she felt and all these feelings and being disheartened by the medical field and, all these things, and as I was looking at it, right, because there's the artist, right, interpretation of it. And I might, with my experience as an art therapist, kind of be curious about something that I see. right? So I'll be very transparent and say something like, is it okay if I project, right? Like my own vision here? And they're curious, of course, and I said, I have to tell you that it very interestingly looks like the female anatomy, right? And out came the tears, all of this crying, and she could see, in the image where there was most pain for her. And that's when women don't have any say over how their birth is going to go.
Mhm.
And they get cut and hurt, right? Because they don't know how to do it in a different way. And so that was very impactful for her. It was the most traumatic part of her work. And it immediately came out in the art. Now, for her, it was a representation of her inner turmoil, right? But my projection helped her take it to another level, right? Of understanding how much pain she was in being in this field and how very much she needed to get out
Mhm.
in some way, right? And so now she's off somewhere in the world teaching art. That's what she decided to do,
Wow.
right? Move through different things. She tried being, tried being like a school aide. She was trying different things, but staying really compassionate with herself and open, And then she finally landed on teaching art because she just enjoyed the art process so much, and that's what she's doing, and happy as a clam, living her life. And what I'd love to tell my clients is what I'm trying to do is talk myself out of a job as soon as possible. That's what I'm trying to do. Because that means that you're living the life you want to be living, you're doing exactly what you want to be doing, and you're feeling pretty good, right? I'm not trying to create a dependence on me.
That's amazing. And I am taking note of that right now because that might be my favorite quote so far. And I was going to ask you to kind of give me an example of the art process and how you take things. And I think you went above and beyond on that before I even asked, and offering your interpretation of what you're seeing changed her life. So I think
Yeah.
people have
And
questions.
I may be off, so that's why it's a curiosity question. And I think that's mainly what I try to teach my clients. It's like if we can exist from a place of being curious, right? Things feel much more different. But when we exist in a place of stress and shoulds and have tos and all of these like unrealistic expectations, we get all worked up, we get really anxious and agitated, and we just can't think straight, and therefore we can't make like the best decisions for us. But if we stay curious, like, oh, I wonder what would happen if this, or I wonder like if I tried this, or then things change, or I wonder what's going on inside me, right? Like that's the ultimate curiosity question. Like, what's happening with me? Not what's wrong with me.
Well
What's
put.
happening with
Well
me?
put. So
Yeah.
I guess going back to that, you know, what's wrong with me, what's happening to me, how you're wording this in your head. A lot of times people seek out therapy because it's a solution to a problem rather than a proactive attempt to maintain their mental health. Can you dive a bit into what obstacles exist into kind of exploring what's going on inside?
I think we have our societal obstacles, right? The continued stigma around mental health and well being, including, and I think mostly that if we focus on our emotional world, that's somehow weak or, yeah, there's just this negative connotation around that. Like, why would you do that? And it's like, well, because we're emotional beings. Like, that's what humans are. We're emotional, sentient beings. We're not thinking beings, right? And so I think that that's really challenging in a society that focus so much on external value and validation.
That's a good point.
So when people are struggling, they just automatically believe there's something wrong with them, right? Because the world looks like it's having a great old time, and it's like, actually, no, like we're all struggling in some way, right? And the more I help them humanize that, I think the better.
So it seems like you're doing a whole lot for your clients. And you mentioned earlier kind of a little bit about what sets you apart, but can you maybe dive a little into what makes Myriam Martinez the one to go to under the best circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, I think that immediately the first thing that pops to mind is, my ethical stance and how much I care about the well-being of people.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not out to make a buck. I don't want to sell anything to anybody. I don't want to push anybody into anything. I just want to show you what I have available, and if it speaks to you, we can have a deeper conversation. But I think that that's the first thing that stands out for me, and as well as my experience and my education, right? Especially when it comes to understanding human development. I forgot to mention that I was a preschool teacher at one point, so like I've studied the whole realm of human development from zero to death.
Mhm.
And so I really understand and get people for the most part. And because, as therapists, we're trained to work with crises and make assessments really quickly, it doesn't take me very long to kind of have a sense of what might be going on for you. And I'll still invite you to consider that that might be what's going on for you. I would never say this is what's happening. Could this be, right? I want you to make the decision about what's happening, right? So that you can then have the motivation to shift it in whatever way you want to shift it. But that's one of the strengths that I hold, is that I can make very quick assessments because of my experience, but also stay fluid, right? So that as I learn more about the client, that can shift as we move, right? But I think keeping first and foremost, my client's well-being, and feeling that, I'm taking care of them in an ethical way, and that I'm not crossing any lines, right? And that I'm there for them. That's very important to me.
Love that. And you're very, even on here on a podcast, you're very intentional about your wording. And I would assume you're the same, probably better for your clients when you're actually with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's funny because the way I describe myself when I'm working with clients, as we're moving through the work, I'll say, you're going to find that I'm a little bit of a stickler about language, because I think it's
Matters.
incredibly impactful, right? So you can say, God, I'm trying to quit drinking. God, I'm trying to quit drinking. Or you can say, I'm someone who doesn't drink. And those are two very different statements. They feel different in your
Oh,
body.
yeah.
One is more empowering than the other, right? And so when we're looking at language, it's really like, how can we phrase things in a way that feels most empowering to us, and helps us grow in the best way we can.
I feel like one is more motivated to keep moving your journey forward.
Exactly. And that's what we're looking for. We want to use language that helps us move forward,
Love it.
not language that keeps us back.
With all of this being said, and all the thought that you put into every single person that comes your way, what's the best compliment anyone's ever given you after you work with
There's just, I think that the common theme, right, that I get from people is, you've changed my life. You've changed my life. And what's interesting about that is that I hear that from people just from them following me on social media or reading my blogs, right? Like people that don't necessarily become clients, all of a sudden will just come up to me and say, oh, I read that what you wrote. God, that was so impactful. I totally changed this or that about my life. And I'm like, wow. Okay, that's awesome. That's part of what I'm trying to do in the world, right? Is just impact people,
them? Yeah.
regardless of whether they're my clients or not. But I think that that's the main thing that I get from people is, you have changed my life. And I do this dance with my clients, right? Where I will take some level of the credit, but I won't take all of the credit. So I'm very clear with them, like, look, here's the thing. I am very good at bringing the horse to the water. I'm excellent at doing that. What happens after that is up to you. Right? And I'll stand there as long as you need to until you take a drink, right? But that's kind of how I work with people. I make sure that we understand, the boundary, like, this is what I do, this is what you do, and this is how we're going to work together to help you move forward.
I love that approach. I'm the same as well. I always tell people, you're in the driver's seat and I'm strapped in the passenger side. You take this however you want to go. I'm just there to help guide you, but you're on the
Hmm.
steering wheel.
Yeah, right. Because I think many people, like you were saying before, like, like the misunderstanding of therapy or coaching, or even in what you do, it's like people come in thinking like you're going to do it for them,
Hmm.
like you're the healer. And it's like, that's not quite how it works.
Yeah.
right? Like, no, you have to put some effort too. I don't have any magical powers. If I did, I'd charge a lot more money.
Oh, yeah, of course. And we send them to Daniel Spain when they actually need the healer to do the work for them.
That's right. No, that's right. And it's interesting because that's a lot of like how I refer, right? Because it may be that this person has something that's really genuinely more physical than emotional. And so then that requires a different type of care, and so I collaborate, with my own acupuncturist, with Daniel, who has been on the show before as a massage therapist. I have my chiropractor that so it's like we're all kind of working together to help the client
Mhm.
just reach their optimal level of wellness.
Absolutely. And for those of you that haven't listened to Daniel Spain's episode, I think he is episode number 6. And he was on a few months back. He's a massage therapist. I think at the time he was based in San Rafael. He's now in Novato at Topo Chiropractic with Dr. John Christman. So go ahead and check that episode out because he does great work as well. And with that, we're going to move on to our local rapid fire segment. And being that you're a Novato based business, I'm going to ask you some things that you like to do around Novato. And this round of local rapid fire is presented by Mayan Builder, winners of awards like Small Business of the Year, Best Home Remodel, and Best Landscape Design. You too will be a fan when you call Mayan. And are you ready to move on to tell everyone your favorite stuff in Novato?
I'm ready.
Your favorite place to eat could be breakfast, lunch, dinner, coffee, anything.
Masa sushi, the best sushi on the planet.
Oh man, there was no hesitation there.
None. Make sure you get there.
All right,
You're going to tell me you agree.
what's the best roll? I gotta know now.
I'm going to be honest, I'm a sashimi girl.
Okay.
So I'm sashimi nigiri, and I really just love. They have this thing called sukisaki, and it's like a salmon it's got like some kind of little sauce on it, but they also quickly fire it, so it's got a tiny bit
Mm.
of crisp on it, and it's like butter in your mouth. It just melts.
What is your favorite view in Novato?
I'm lucky. I live right down the street from Mount Burdell.
We
So
we
like
had
I can look up at it, or I can climb it and look at all of Novato from there.
love it. You're the second guest to say it's my backyard. That was made in Marin, our very first guest on here. Said that they were like, "Can we
Hmm.
say our backyard?" And I was like, "Yeah, if it's the best view in Novato, I can't argue with you."
Yeah, really.
What's your favorite business in Novato other than your own?
My favorite business in Novato. Ooh, that's a hard one. Well, I'm gonna have to be maybe a little biased and go with either Daniel Spain, right, massage, or Tongbu Wellness Center, which is where my acupuncturist works out of.
Okay. And what's something you haven't done in Novato yet that is on your wish list?
Hmm. I have not hiked in Pacheco Valley, which is the southern part of Novato, because I'm in the northern part of Novato, and Mount Bertel is like 2 minutes, drive from my house. I kind of tend to stay in northern Novato, and I hear that it's a really beautiful hike. So I want to make sure that I get myself out there soon.
Ease of access is important, right? We're busy people, and when we have something right in front of us that we're happy with, it's easier just to take that route sometimes.
And I will say, it'll be interesting to see if other Nevadans can relate, but Nevadans are interesting because Northern Nevadans don't want to go to South Nevada and vice versa. Like it's some long drive or
Yeah,
something.
that's how it is in Petaluma too. I live in West Petaluma, and it's like the East and West Petaluma bridge is it's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah.
So after we wrap up here today, where can our listeners find you?
Well, I am on several social media platforms. I have a Facebook page. You can find me at Myriam Martinez, Self Leadership Coach, and on Instagram at Myriam Martinez Coaching, LinkedIn. I try to be relatively active, and share valuable things whenever I can. And people can go to my website and just kind of check me out. And actually, when you go to my website, there is a free doodle your stress away offering that I have. And so people can sign up and they get like 3 consecutive emails that where I talk about the neuroscience of doodling and then offer like some tips on how to use it to manage stress.
That's awesome. Then our podcast is all about highlighting local businesses. So let's get out of Novato for a minute, and I want you to let me know one business, either Marin or Sonoma County, that you think deserves some extra recognition before we sign off here today.
So I have been frequenting Betsy's Tacos on 4th Street in San Rafael. And I love them because they're Salvadoran and my dad was Salvadoran. And so they make both pupusas and tacos. And it's the only place I've ever found where you could have both things at once. And it's like my dream come true. I'm there like at least twice a month.
That is unique. And is there anything here today I didn't ask before we close this out, or something that you wanted to just mention real quickly to our listeners?
Yeah, I think what maybe like some final words that I'd like to share with people is just to remember that, prioritizing your mental and emotional well being is not a sign of weakness. It's actually really, really empowering and strength inducing to focus on that because when you don't have a connection to your inner world, like I said before, it will drive for you and you're kind of going what's happening, why am I doing these things, why am I making these choices, right? And it's like, right, because there's something going on underneath the surface that is driving this, right? So it's empowering when you can figure out what it is that's getting in your way and get moving with your life.
Mm-hmm. Love that. And I just love the way that you have attacked everything today and your ethical approach. And that you're not just diving in to make a dime, you're going to have the consultation with them, dive into them, see if there's a course of action you could take, let them in on what that course of action is, and help guide them towards finding the problem. It doesn't seem like you're ever telling them, this is you, this is this is that. It's helping them explore how to get better and just
Yeah.
being that guiding light. And I love that about you.
Well, kind of getting back to who you really are, like having that deep connection with self and knowing and embracing and accepting all the parts of who you are, bumps and all.
Love it. And with that, we are going to close it out today of episode 13 with Myriam Martinez Coaching, based in Novato, but you can catch her online at her website. We will put that in the description, whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Just go in the description, you'll see those below. And that is it. I am Kyle Mashable closing this out of the Marin-Sonoma Shop Local podcast, and we will see you back here next time with the business based in Tiburon.